Ever dealt with that one neighbor who feels like they were ripped straight out of a chaotic reality show and somehow ended up living right next to you? Yeah, I thought I had, until I discovered just how much pure drama one person could shove into a single SUV. Enter Karen, the classic, textbook HOA Karen. Imagine this. Blinding white SUV. Sunglasses so huge they look like they were stolen off a movie set. A permanent scowl powerful enough to fuel a mid-sized town. And a remarkable gift for turning your quiet suburban existence into a live-action sitcom. It all kicked off on a totally average Tuesday morning. I walk outside, coffee in hand, ready to head to work. And boom, there's Karen's SUV parked directly in front of my garage again. Not just a little in the way, but blocking it so completely I could have hosted a yard sale in front of the door and still had room to spare. And this wasn't some isolated moment of confusion. No, this was her brand new morning tradition, like the world's worst alarm clock. At first, I tried giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's lost. Maybe her GPS had a sudden meltdown and decided my driveway was a public parking lot. But nope. Day 2, same SUV, same glare. Day 3, I left polite sticky notes on her windshield. 0 results. Day 4, I began wondering if this was some kind of psychological endurance test. Was I living in a neighborhood or an oddly specific suburban-themed escape room? Anyone who's ever encountered a true Karen knows there's a razor-thin boundary between, wow, this is irritating, and oh great, this is spiraling into full-on madness. By day 5, I'd had enough. I called the HOA, not to rage, just to seek some peaceful, civilized intervention. Maybe a gentle nudge like, hey, could you not park there? But apparently that was too ambitious. The HOA hit me with the classic, we'll look into it. Spoiler, they absolutely did not look into it. So I did what any battle-hardened suburban resident would do. I started gathering evidence. Pictures, timestamps, dramatic reenactments starring my cat as the unimpressed witness. I even made a tiny flipbook animation of her SUV inching closer to my garage each morning. Yes, my cat silently judged me the entire time. But then things took a fascinating turn, because while I was deep in my investigative parking saga, I uncovered something that would stun even the most ruthless gossip columnist. Turns out, Karen wasn't merely dedicated to blocking my garage. She was, in fact, passionately dedicated to violating every parking rule our neighborhood had ever written. And when I say every rule, I mean all of them. 27 unpaid parking violations. 27. Not 25, not 30. A perfectly chaotic 27. Each one a tiny paper reminder from the parking authorities whispering, hey, maybe you should consider obeying the rules. But Karen? She treated those tickets like limited edition collectibles. She basically had the HOA version of Pokemon cards, except instead of rare holographic Charizard, she was missing on-time payments from her set. I honestly stood there stunned. The audacity, the commitment, the pure chaos. This woman had the nerve to block my garage like it was her personal throne while simultaneously racking up parking violations longer than my abandoned New Year's resolution list. And me? I'm out there with my morning coffee asking myself, is this reality? Did I move into some alternate universe where the laws of physics and parking bend around Karen's SUV? By the end of that first week, my patience had snapped in half. I needed backup, though I never imagined who would respond. Enter the local police. That's when the whole situation skyrocketed from absurd to legendary, so wild that even my cat fainted. Maybe I embellished a hair. But when the officers ran her plates and saw her record, just a tiny detail, her unpaid tickets weren't just a stack. They were a mountain range. Suddenly my war with the SUV wasn't just comical and irritating. It was borderline mythical. And that, dear friends, is where the story really starts to take shape. 1 minute, I'm just a regular homeowner battling a feral parking situation, and the next, the cavalry has arrived. The police. And not just any police. They pull out the official Karen citation, Apocalypse dossier. A stack of violations thicker than my neighbor's weekly Costco haul. And these weren't innocent, oops, meter expired mistakes. No, these were level 10 violations. Fire lane blocking, driveway obstruction, and one brutal charge for excessive horn use after 10 p.m. I had to genuinely ask myself if I'd wandered into a sitcom, or if hidden cameras were waiting for me to lose my mind on her SUV for peak entertainment value. When the officer knocked on Karen's door, I swear I heard her internal monologue vibrating through the stucco. Pure Karen energy. Who dares interrupt my sacred SUV kingdom? Can they not sense my superiority? This is my driveway, spiritually. But reality was waiting to body slam her. The officer began reading off her ticket list, and each number felt like a drum hit in my personal victory song. 27 unpaid tickets. 27. By ticket 10, I'm pretty sure her jaw detached from her skull. By 15, she was arguing the tickets were guidelines, not requirements. By 27, she hit a denial level that made me question whether humans should have free will. Meanwhile, I'm trying to hold in laughter because if I crack up too hard, it might look like I orchestrated everything, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely off. I had daily photo evidence of her SUV barricading my garage. I had timestamps, logs, even a tiny reenactment video using action figures, because that's apparently how you cope with HOA warfare in 2025. The officer tried to remain professional while explaining consequences. Karen's responses? A roller coaster of gasps, dramatic hand flailing worthy of Shakespeare, and occasional, "This is harassment." It was mesmerizing. I kept waiting for confetti to fall from the sky, or a trombone to play every time another violation was read. Then, plot twist, the officer calmly noted that several tickets were now eligible for towing, fines, and maybe even small claims court. And that's when Karen unraveled. It was a meltdown historians should study. She paced like a caffeinated squirrel, ranting about injustice and neighbor conspiracies while her massive sunglasses slid down her face. She attempted a dramatic exit, but tripped over her own shoelace, or karma, honestly hard to tell, and landed by her precious SUV, the same one she'd used to blockade my garage. Cue the slow-motion replay in my brain. She looked like a cat discovering too late that the cardboard box was a trap. But the best moment came when the officer offered the simplest solution of all. "Ma'am, maybe you should move your SUV from in front of your neighbor's garage." Karen froze, stared at the SUV, and muttered with all the heartbreak of losing a soulmate, "But it's my favorite spot." I didn't know whether to pity her, question reality, or record a documentary. She looked like someone being separated from an emotional support vehicle. By then, half the neighborhood was peeking from behind curtains. Whispers, pointing. That justice at last vibe filled the street. Even the mailman paused mid-route, clearly torn between his job and witnessing suburban history unfold. And me? I'm standing there thinking. I endured a week of daily SUV blockage, compiled a mountain of evidence, and the universe rewarded me with a front-row ticket to chaos. By the end of the day, the officer issued a firm warning. Karen moved the SUV. My garage was finally free, and the look on her face was pure defeat. The expression of someone outsmarted by a neighbor armed with nothing but a phone camera and the determination not to be trapped in their own driveway. Little did I know, though, this was only the beginning. Oh no, this was just the intermission. The wildest, most jaw-dropping, most unhinged chapter of Karen versus the neighborhood. So after a week filled with daily SUV barricades, police visits, and Karen's Oscar-worthy meltdown, I naively thought the chaos had ended. Cute, right? Wrong. Because Karen is the sort of neighbor who takes tiny inconveniences and turns them into multi-episode finales worthy of a dramatic reality show, and my garage? Still squarely in the danger zone. Oh no! The suburban saga was only warming up. It began with something deceptively harmless. Karen parked her SUV slightly off to the side, almost like she was testing territory, hovering like a vulture waiting for leftovers. I left for work believing the storm had passed. But when I got home, there was again her SUV angle with surgical precision, blocking not only my garage but half the street. I swear I almost laughed, except this was beyond comedy now. Traffic literally had to maneuver around her personal shrine, the stubbornness. At that point, I put on my detective hat. I ran her plates online, yes, There are tools for bored suburban investigators, and discovered her ticket situation had escalated. Not only were there still the original 27 unpaid violations, she had somehow racked up more in the few days since her police warning. Each shiny new ticket was like the universe dropping tiny comedic gifts from above. But Karen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She decided to unleash the ultimate power move, a dramatic showdown at the HOA meeting. She signed herself up for a speaking slot, armed with charts, graphs, and, brace yourself, a printed slideshow featuring a diagram of my garage as evidence that I was overreacting. I wish I were joking. There she was at the community hall, gesturing at her PowerPoint like she was campaigning for office. The audience was torn perfectly in half. Horrified spectators and people silently fighting to hold in laughter, while I sat in the back corner munching imaginary popcorn. She launched her speech with peak Karen energy. I am being unfairly targeted. This is harassment. She waved her arms with such force I half expected a light fixture to crash down. And then came the best part. She accidentally knocked over a stack of her very own unpaid tickets. They exploded across the floor like confetti at the saddest wedding in history. An elderly neighbor whispered, Is this her life? And I nearly choked trying not to laugh out loud. Then came the plot twist nobody saw approaching. The HOA president, who had been watching with the patience of a monk, asked calmly, Karen, do you understand that blocking your neighbor's garage and ignoring 27 tickets can result in fines, legal action, and towing? Karen froze. Her armor of entitlement cracked like brittle pavement. And for a brief moment, it looked like she might apologize. But then, with absolute dramatic flair, she pointed her SUV and declared, But I need that space for my daily ritual. The audience let out the loudest collective groan I've ever heard. At that point, the HOA had officially reached their breaking point. They issued a formal written warning, documented every infraction she'd ever committed, and even scheduled a towing notice if she blocked my garage again. And that's when her grand finale meltdown erupted. She stormed out of the meeting in a cloud of fury, stomped to her SUV, glared at everyone like we'd ruined her life, and then promptly drove up onto the curb. The tires screeched, people gasped, and the cat from Chapter 1 watched with a judgmental expression only felines can conjure. The next morning, the SUV was gone. The street was peaceful. My garage stood liberated at last. And the neighborhood, well, we had all survived what I now lovingly call the Karen Chronicles. People whispered about it for weeks. Did you hear about that SUV fiasco? 27 tickets. She made a presentation with slides. And me? I finally got to drink my morning coffee in blissful silence, sometimes glancing at the empty spot where the SUV once sat, smiling at the memory of one of the most absurd, comedic, and theatrically dramatic weeks of my entire life. The lesson? Never underestimate a Karen with an SUV. Never underestimate the universe's comedic timing. And never forget, documentation is everything, because while justice may take its sweet time, it arrives with flourish, chaos sparkles, and a full neighborhood ready to watch the show. And when you think it's over, trust me, there's always another Karen warming up somewhere, SUV in position, ready to ignite the sequel. If you love this tale, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Every single one helps me bring you even more dramatic, ridiculous HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story, where the justice gets even more delicious.